Good evening, everyone, and I'm delighted to welcome you to today's open talk session. Thank you very much for coming once again. The purpose of these talks is to give you an opportunity to hear directly from university representatives without any intermediaries. Um, in today's world where misinformation can easily influence decisions, especially when it's about finance or when finance are involved. We believe it is crucial that you get the facts straight from the source. And this is the purpose of these open talks. It just bring the people who really knows about um, about the university and about the UK. And today I'm very excited to introduce Kevin McDonald, um, the regional manager at University of Sussex. Sussex is not only known for its academic excellence, but also for its global reputation. And here are a few facts about Sussex. Is ranked number one for 7 years consecutive for development studies, number one in the world for 7 years in the QS World Rankings. And this is a privilege to have such an impressive university. Kevin will share more about what makes Sussex such an attractive and university for international students. I have to say that Sussex we are official partners with Sussex University, and is one of the best universities, one of the best partners for us because every time we need their support, they are there to help us. And plus, every time I have to go to Brighton is amazing. And there is one thing I always regret. I have been living here in the UK for 15 years. And the only thing I regret is not move to Brighton and I stay in London. And I think Brighton is amazing. It's such an amazing place to live. What is like living in Brighton, Kevin? Are you from Brighton?
Yeah, well, I'm not originally. You might have heard my accent. Everybody, if depends how well your ear is attuned to it. I'm Irish originally, but like you, I kind of regret not having gone to university at Sussex. I would 100% have loved to study there, and I live there now, and I really enjoy it. But I always think it would have been even better when I was 18 or in my early 20s. It's very much a young person city.
Mm.
You know this, Paolo. Sometimes cities in the UK can be a little sleepy, let's say. After 6 p.m., everything shuts down and nothing's happening. But Brighton always feels like there's something happening. And yeah, what I said in the presentation, how it just feels like such an inclusive community. Everybody is welcome in Brighton, and it's known for being quite a liberal, progressive city. And the university reflects that values as well. And having such a big international population on campus, I don't think any international student ever feels out of place or, feels like they're alone because there are so many other international students, and you're going to find somebody from your country in particular. But if you want, a lot of students are leaving, their home country because they want that international experience. They don't want to just hang out with other people from their country. And, you will definitely be mixing with lots of other nationalities and cultures as well.
Thank you. Yeah, it's such an amazing place, definitely. And I agree. Having the chance to study at Sussex is a privilege. It's a really cool place, and the campus is huge. I believe it's more than 90 acres of land, which is around
Mm.
160,000 square meters. It's huge.
Yeah, it feels big and small at the same time, if that makes sense, because it does need to be a big campus because we have 11 different schools and the accommodation and all the facilities I mentioned, but nothing's more than a 10-minute walk, which I love. But even though our students do get a bit lazy sometimes, and there's one bar right at the top of campus that they won't go to because they think that's too far away. But it's everything. You will never have more than a 10-minute walk
Yeah.
to
And
anything on campus. So yeah.
everything is on campus. You have a supermarket, you have a doctor, you have
Hmm.
some sort of like a mini shopping center for students.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, they live in it's a closed campus, which is really good because in terms of safety is great because no one else could enter to the campus without the proper ID. Um,
Exactly, yeah.
and Sussex has produced some incredible alumni and Nobel Prize winners. Could you highlight a few of the university's most notable achievements and the alumni who have gone make significant contributions in their field?
Yeah, I mean, significant alumni, particularly coming from our development studies courses, because that's of our particularly good ranking in that. So the former president of South Africa is an alumni. He studied economics, I believe, and the most not the current president of Costa Rica, but the one before him, whose name I've forgotten at the minute. He was a development studies scholar as well. And we have three Nobel Prize winners amongst our alumni. We have two for chemistry and one for physics. And I believe actually just last week there was the new a Nobel Prize winner for AI and computer science was announced. And currently he's at the University of Toronto, but he began his career with Sussex. He was a PhD student in the 70s. So I think we're going to claim him as well as one of our alumni. And then you'll have lots of alumni that, maybe aren't as household names. They're maybe not as famous, around the world, but they're making such significant impact in big global organizations. Like so many of our graduates have gone on to work the United Nations and World Health Organization. And, in a smaller scale, so many of our business students get their graduate placements at places like, KPMG and Deloitte and these what we refer to as the big four, the corporations in London. So yeah, I think we had a recent graduate who worked on Joe Biden's. He was the communication strategist for Joe Biden's presidential campaign last time. Of course, he won't be working for Joe Biden again this time, but and yeah, the other one that comes to mind is the CNN news anchor Becky Anderson as well. She studied at Sussex as well, so really wide range of alumni. Some super famous and very prolific, and others not, but still just as important. I'd hope
Yeah, yeah. I think the name of the president of Costa Rica is Carlos Alvarado,
that
and
was it.
the 48th president of Costa Rica.
Yes.
Something really interesting, and I'm fascinated about that. Is it true that you have the only quantum computer in the whole United Kingdom?
Yes,
The
that
only
is true. That's
university.
something unique to our physics department. I will say physics is not something I've a particularly great understanding of, but yeah, that's something we have the quantum computer, and it really kind of revolutionizes our ability to kind of solve complex problems. And yeah, that's just typical of the facilities that we have available at Sussex, whether it's for physics or for our engineering department. Anything that requires good technology, we have absolutely state-of-the-art industry level technology there. So, and what's important as well is that, this is not just something for the students to look at and think that's impressive. So much of their course is built around them being assessed on actually being able to use this technology and the practical implications of it. Same with any of our students studying film studies as well. It's not just going to be theory. They're actually going to be in our studios, working with our cameras, our audio visual equipment. It's when a course requires the use of technology, it's taught in a very hands-on, practical way so that you're getting full use of this technology. And then when you go out in the workplace, you can tell your employers you've used this machine or you've used this kind of technology before. And then that's really going to give you an advantage in the job market against other people whose courses maybe were a bit more theoretical and less practical.
Well, thank you for that. Now, let's talk about entry requirements. And by the way, if you have a question, this is the best time to ask Kevin. Remember, the purpose of this meeting is giving you the chance to interact with our partners, and Kevin is willing to answer any question. But I want to start asking you about the entry requirements. How difficult it is, because what you said is just Sussex is such an amazing place. It must be so difficult to get a place.
Well, I think given our rankings and our strengths, in comparison to other universities, I feel like our entry requirements are quite reasonable. So it's really hard to discuss all entry requirements here. But for example, any students taking the International Baccalaureate, we'd ask for 34 points overall for most of our courses. So I that compared to other universities of similar ranking in those subjects, I think is quite achievable, let's say. I'm not going to say it's easy. If you're applying for a master's course, again, it will vary from country to country what we ask for. But, if you're coming from Mexico, for example, we'd ask for a promedio of like 8 out of 10, perhaps. I know for Colombia, we're asking for probably 3.5 out of 4. Generally, we're looking for the equivalent of a second class honors degree in the UK system. So the UK system ranks first class honors degree, then what we call a 2-1 is the second class honors. So that's what we're looking for. So we're looking for high quality students, but not necessarily the top students. So I think for a lot of students, it's probably a more realistic ambition than perhaps they think, given our rankings and that. And what's nice about our entry process, and I think this is kind of common to the UK, is that we look primarily at your grades, which is, means you don't have to necessarily have a huge amount of extracurricular activities. They're always helpful in your application, but, generally, if you know what your grade is and you can look on our website and check that, then you have a strong chance perhaps of being made an offer. Sometimes we do interview for our courses, but often we don't. Generally, if a course involves working with people, so for example, our medicine course, social work, things like that, we are going to have to interview. But often we don't need to interview. And also it's quite rare for us to use other kind of admissions-based tests as well. So usually the main requirements are, the International Baccalaureate, say for undergraduate degrees, and maybe a good quality undergraduate degree for masters, and then an English language qualification as well. In terms of those, we're happy to accept IELTS, Cambridge English, TOEFL. So you're not restricted just to one type of test. There are a range of tests we would take. And it varies between course, but again, I don't think these levels are too challenging. Perhaps often we're only looking for 6 overall in IELTS, so a B2 level. Some will require C1 level, but yeah, I generally think it's definitely not as difficult as our rankings might suggest, I think.
Well, yeah, it's very flexible. Yesterday we had Durham University, and obviously in terms of rankings, both of you are top in the country, and definitely Sussex is way more flexible. Um, Now, we talk a little bit about tuition fees, please.
Yeah. And I think, there we don't do too badly either. We know the UK is, an expensive option compared to some countries, but I'd like to think that, again, given our rankings and our strengths, our tuition fees are quite reasonable compared to other UK universities. So, as I said in the presentation, for courses like development studies, politics, international relations, those courses are what we call classroom based, and they're going to be 22,570. And courses like our engineering, physics, maths courses will be more expensive. They're going to be 26,250. There are some exceptions. Something like medicine is an awful lot higher, but medicine is generally an exception. It's always going to have different
In the
rules.
whole region.
Yeah,
So yeah, let's talk a little bit about medicine.
right.
Um, why it's so difficult to have a place? I mean, I could answer that question, but I would love to hear from you.
Yeah.
What's your
Unfor
opinion about that?
Unfortunately, it's just out of our control as a university and all the universities in general, because this is a government restriction.
Hmm,
Because
okay.
the course is basically administered and funded by our national health system, the NHS. They are essentially training our doctors, paying to train our doctors. And so they have a lot of influence and say in how many international students we can recruit to our medicine courses. Whereas for any other course, it's totally the university's decision about how many international students they want. But at Sussex, for example, we are restricted to 10 places per year for international
And
students. Yeah.
10 students in such a huge university.
Yes,
Wow.
but you could go to any UK med school and it's going to be a similar figure. Sometimes it's maybe 15, sometimes it's 20, but it's always a very small proportion of the total students will be international on medicine courses. So places, the competition for places on medicine courses in the UK for an international student is fierce, very, very difficult. I will say it's a fair process at least because it's the same application process for home students. They don't have it any easier per se. They still
Obviously.
have to get exceptionally good grades and they have to take the admissions test and interview as the international students do. It's just, everybody has to be very good, but if you're being an international student, you have to be amazing to
Okay.
get on the medicine course.
What is being amazing to have a chance to study there?
Right. First of all, from the academic profile. So let's say if you were taking the International Baccalaureate, you would need a minimum of 36 points, but really most of our students coming on this are 40 to 42. For students joining us in countries in South America where you're not at an international school, unfortunately, your kind of state qualification wouldn't actually be high enough. It wouldn't be considered equivalent to A levels or IB. So you would have to have exceptionally high school grades plus a foundation year before you could even enter. That's one aspect. There's also an admissions test, an aptitude test called UCAT, UCAT, and all the UK med schools now use this. And so we decide based on, let's say, your IB scores or your predicted IB scores, and your UCAT scores, if we can then decide to interview you as well. Because when we are choosing our doctors, we want to make sure you're more than just really clever, because that doesn't make you a good doctor. We need to see your human qualities like, compassion and empathy and resilience and all these things. And the best way for students to demonstrate that actually is by having good work experience or voluntary experience, which we know that's not easy for everyone to get when you're 15, 16, but we have to see that you've put yourself in emotionally challenging situations and that you're tough enough to be able to deal with everything you're going to see in a hospital. So yeah, if you apply for a history course, basically, you just need good grades. We don't really, we don't need to see your character so much. But when you're going to be a doctor and dealing with all sorts of patients and all sorts of situations, we need to know you're the right type of person as well. So that's why it's so demanding, I think, an entry process.
Really interesting that I didn't know that there were so little options for international students and it's in the whole country.
Yeah,
Now,
well, what I always recommend as well, there is a way to get onto a medicine course into graduate entry. So I always recommend students have a backup, that is in medicine, something like genetics or biology or something like that. And it
biomedical
is,
sciences is a good
yeah,
option.
exactly. And you can then try to apply for medical school after you complete your undergraduate degree in one of these subjects, and you can get advanced entry second year into med school. That's not guaranteed, but that's another way of doing it if it doesn't work out the first time, another possible route.
It is you need to study, I guess, 2 years more.
Yes, it makes it 2 years. It makes
That
an
a bit.
already long process even longer, unfortunately.
Um, uh, Financing education abroad is a major consideration
Mm,
for Latin American students. Could you tell
of
us
course.
more about the scholarships you have available or some sort of financial aid options available?
Yeah. Um, I'll start with external scholarships because this is something that a lot of our Latin American students have been using to come to Sussex. So these are mainly for postgraduate students. So I'll start with that. I mentioned the Chevening Scholarship Scheme. That's a UK government scholarship, and Sussex has no control over who is awarded these and who becomes a Chevening Scholar. But as I say, we have an excellent track record of receiving of Chevening
Definitely.
Scholars. Yeah. So that scholarship basically pays for everything. Chevening will pay the tuition fees to the university. They give students a living allowance. They pay for your flights. It's fantastic. But of course, everybody wants it. And it's open to applicants from all over the world. Generally, Chevening are looking for future leaders, potential future leaders. So they're looking for somebody who's going to make real change and impact in their country. So I'm not an expert on how you become a Chevening Scholar because, as I say, it's not our job as a university to decide who becomes it. But we get quite a lot of Latin American students who are Chevening Scholars coming to Sussex. There are in various countries, there are different funding bodies, government funding bodies that may help support your studies at Sussex. So, for example, for anyone from Colombia, you may be aware of Colfuturo. In Mexico, we have relations with FUNED and FIDER, and we have relationships with these government bodies that do allow for discounts as well. So, for example, in Colombia, if you're a Colfuturo scholar, we give a 20% discount to all students for that. Now, at undergraduate level, I will say your options are perhaps more limited. There aren't as many external scholarships. So you would have to look for internal scholarships. And we have many. Some are very niche and very specialist. So they may not apply to everybody, but the most popular and the most generous one is our Chancellor's International Scholarship, which is a £5,000 discount on your tuition fees for each year of study. So it's quite competitive, but not as competitive, say, as Chevening or something like that. And it basically relies on high grades. And I think if you're looking to study in the UK and looking at scholarships, almost always it's high grades. It's academic potential or academic grades already achieved. So for us, we'd be looking for, say, at undergraduate level, an IB student achieving 38 points, or 3 A's at A level, or something like the equivalent of that in your country's qualification. You can search around on our website to see there are more options. Like we have smaller things like music scholarships and sports scholarships, but they're not as generous, I'm afraid. And they're quite limited in their numbers. So the academic scholarship, it's the best chance, the Chancellor's International Scholarship. But I will say, if you're considering the UK in general, and Paolo, you know this, the idea of a full scholarship is quite rare. It doesn't happen the way it does in the USA. And sports scholarships certainly not as big in the UK as they are in the USA.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and it's true. I
Mm.
think what makes the UK unique is guaranteed quality of education and a really good backup in terms of reputation of your professional experience.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'd add to that, that the price you pay isn't just the teaching experience you're getting. There are so many, as I mentioned, so many student services available. So the careers and entrepreneurship team are fantastic at getting your career set up. And but there's all the other teams like a housing team. So for example, when you want to move off campus, we have a housing team that you can consult for advice and who can review your contracts. And we have just a great pastoral support in the team. And of course, that all comes with a cost. And that's kind of what your tuition fees are bringing you, not just the expertise of these world-class academics and teaching, but all the other services that are going to ensure that you remain, happy and healthy, and you're not suffering in your personal life as well. So, we want you to have a well-rounded experience at Sussex.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Thank you for mentioning this. I think we still have 7 minutes, and one of the questions I want to ask is exactly about professional development. I mean, you are going to invest a lot of money in one of the best universities in the UK. What is going to be after? What do you have to offer to graduate students?
Mm. Well, first of all of our courses come with, we call an experience year. And in that year, you have two choices. You can study abroad, which I think is a great form of personal development, not necessarily career development, but moving to Japan, I think, is going to be a culture shock that will develop your personal and social skills in a way something else couldn't. But we also use that year if you want to do a work placement or an internship. And this is really like the first taste of what the working world would be like. So you do have to apply for these jobs and interview as if it was a real job. But basically, our careers team in each school will be holding your hand all the way, and try and make it as easy as possible. We can't go into and do the interview for you, but we can give you so much advice and so many tips. And of course, what we have is the connections to these industries as well, which of course most students won't have on their own. So that's the benefit, that we can set you up with companies in Brighton, in London, and abroad, depending on what you're studying. And because we've had such a long tradition of sending students into these companies and they've made such a good impression, these companies really love Sussex, students to come do their placements. So your chances of securing a good, strong placement are very high. And I'm talking about placements, some of our business students have done before they've even graduated in their placement year. They're working at companies like Deloitte, KPMG, things like that. And in many cases, it's quite common for these companies to say to our students, hey, you know what, go back, finish your degree at Sussex and come work for us, because they've made such a good impression. They've had such a good experience. So that's just one way. But even throughout the other 3 years, there's things like careers fairs where these companies are coming into the university and you're really having the opportunity to network and meet the right people. Lots of your courses will have practical elements where there'll be industry briefs. So they'll have, you'll be set projects by somebody in the industry, which really gives you that, again, that sense of what it would be like to work in that field. And yeah, there's such a practical element. Everything, all the theory that we learn, we look at how that should be applied in real life. So everything you learn in a business course is not just abstract and theory. We're trying to see how it's impacted in real life. So I think Sussex does a really good job, but it does rely on the students engaging and really being proactive. Nobody forces you to do a placement year. Nobody forces you to go to a careers fair. But the more you ask for help, the more you want to get involved, the more you're going to get out of the careers team, and the better you'll be placed then for the job market when you graduate.
That's a really good advice, and that's a really good point. It's about looking for what is available, what tools you have, and go out and get that support.
And
Uh,
Paolo, to add to that, just I don't know if people are aware of the post-study work visa. I don't know if you were
Oh,
going to mention that,
absolutely.
but
If you please tell us a little bit more about that.
yeah, so that's something. One good decision our last government made was to introduce a post-study work visa, whereby
Mhm.
everybody who graduates from a UK university, no matter what the subject, no matter what the university, you are then allowed to apply for another visa, post-study work visa, which allows you to stay in the UK for an additional 2 years after you've studied. So if you're just getting started in your career and you really want to stay in the UK and build up that experience, you have those 2 years in which you can work and do anything you like,
Yeah,
basically, in the UK.
yeah.
And then who knows what opportunities may come afterwards. It's quite common, especially in London, for like big corporations, multinational corporations, to sponsor workers to stay in the country afterwards. So even more long term, it might be possible, but you would have a minimum of these 2 years after you graduate to
Yeah.
really enhance your work experience.
The UK is one of the most influential countries in the world with one of the most or the strongest education system in the world. Yeah, there are problems, obviously, but it's a stepping stone to your professional development.
I think
I have
so.
one
Yeah.
question from Amber. Looks like she's asking about if you do need to have an IB to be able to study at Sussex. So if you don't have an IB but a local qualification, what is that?
Mhm.
What we need to do?
So we have at Sussex what we call foundation years in various subjects, and these are designed for students whose qualification we don't think is equivalent to an IB or A levels, and it's another way of getting onto your undergraduate course, but just a slightly longer route. So the foundation year is 1 year in length, and it will be in a very general subject, like a foundation in business, a foundation in social sciences, in arts, or life sciences. You pick that whichever field you like, and if you pass that year, you just need to pass, you can then progress on to any undergraduate degree within that subject area. So if you did our foundation in business, you can then do anything in economics, accounting, finance, marketing, whatever you like. So it's just that extra year to build up your level, just to get you at the same level as IB or A level students. And then you'll feel really well prepared and really ready for your full undergraduate study. So that does make your degree 4 years instead of three, but it's a way to get into the UK undergraduate system if your country's qualification is not high enough, unfortunately.
I think we share the same partnership with Study Group.
Yeah,
Study Group is the official provider to do the foundation. And if
yeah.
you need more help, obviously we are partners as well with Study Group. We'll be more than happy
Mm.
on that too.
Yeah, and a lot of students really enjoy that foundation year. They like having that more time to adjust to the UK system and just find their feet a little bit before the real undergraduate degree, so to speak, starts. So it's a good option.
It is. It is. Thank you so much for that. And Kevin, uh, thank you. It is almost 12. It's midnight here in the UK. So I really appreciate you are doing this big effort to stay here. Looks like we have one more question.
Yeah, it's the IB
Yeah.
question again. So in regards to the IB, we do need the full diploma
Yeah.
generally.
Mhm.
So I understand what you're saying. You're studying within the IB system, but in order to go straight to our undergraduate degree, you would need to be awarded the full diploma. So individual certificates and getting a kind of final overall score would only allow you to enter the foundation course, unfortunately.
All right. Thank you. I hope, Amber, that is clear now. If you still have any questions, please feel free to email us. In the meantime, if you want to contact Kevin or you want to contact me, please, we're gonna put our emails here in the chat. Kevin, if you can help us with that as well,
Sure.
feel free to contact us here.
I'm a slow typer, so
Academic Action is official representative for Sussex University in Latin America. So either Kevin or myself, we will be more than happy to answer any question you have. And
yes.
in just one more minute, I just wanted to say again, um, if you, I think studying abroad is, or studying abroad is not a matter of being lucky or have enough money or having the right contacts. It's about knowing what to do. There are so
Yeah.
many opportunities. There are
Mm.
164 universities in the UK.
Yeah.
So you probably don't have all the money to study at Sussex. So there are other options, and the purpose of Open Talks is precisely help you to get to know those universities. Academic
Mm.
Action is official representative of a lot of universities. We are not an agency, we are education consultants. And if you have any question about your daughter or son, about yourself, about your options here in the UK, feel free to contact us. And that's all for this session. Thank you once again, Kevin, and thank you all of you for staying with us. Our next session is going to be in 10 minutes with the University of Birmingham. And the next session will be on Monday with Cardiff University and Aberystwyth University. So in 30 seconds, Kevin, uh, what is the best of Sussex in your opinion? And without it,
Um, I think it's the opportunity to interact with people from all over the world and just have a really life-changing academic experience, but also a life-changing experience in terms of your own personal growth and social development. And I think Sussex will be a very precious memory that you will take with you for the rest of your life, whatever you end up doing, wherever you go.
well, with those words, let's say thank you and thank you, Kevin, for your time.
Okay. Thank you very much, Paolo, and thank you for everybody who joined us tonight or this afternoon.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.